Colorado's mountain towns have long been painted as the American dream wrapped in pine trees and powder snow, but that dream is rotting from the inside out. What was once a slow-burning fuse of unsustainable housing economics has now become a full-blown structural collapse, and the cracks are impossible to ignore. We're talking about markets where median home prices soared past $1.2 million, while local wages stagnated at $45,000, where short-term rental saturation hit 40% in some zip codes, where insurance companies are fleeing wildfire zones entirely, and where entire communities are hollowing out as workers flee to Kansas City and Tulsa. These aren't just corrections. These are controlled demolitions of real estate ecosystems that were built on a foundation of speculative madness, climate denial, and economic fantasy. The luxury condos sit empty. The infrastructure crumbles under tourist weight. The hospitals can't staff their emergency rooms. And when the next recession hits, when the climate disasters multiply, when the remote work bubble finally bursts, these towns won't just decline, they'll implode. What follows are the 9 Colorado mountain towns most at risk of complete real estate collapse as the illusion of alpine paradise gives way to economic ruin. Number 9. Steamboat Springs. Steamboat Springs gleams in the brochures. World-class skiing, hot springs, cowboy charm meets luxury amenities. A place where you can have it all. In reality, Steamboat is a pressure cooker of housing dysfunction that's already beginning to explode. The median home price hit $1.35 million in 2024, up 187% since 2019, while the median household income crawled to just $72,000. That's an 18.75 to 1 price-to-income ratio, nearly triple the threshold economists consider sustainable. Short-term rentals now consume 34% of the town's housing stock, creating ghost neighborhoods that fill for 3-day weekends and sit dark for weeks at a stretch. The local hospital announced in late 2024 that it was cutting emergency services 2 nights per week because it couldn't house nurses who were making $85,000 annually but facing $2,400 studio apartment rents or $650,000 starter condos. The ski resort itself reported a 12% decline in season pass sales for 2024-2025, the first significant drop in 15 years, as California and Texas buyers who scooped up properties during the pandemic now realize they're bleeding $4,000 monthly on mortgages for homes they use 3 weeks a year. Property insurance costs have spiked 340% since 2021 due to wildfire risk. The 2020 Cameron Peak fire burned within 12 miles of town, and climate projections show the fire season extending by 43 days through 2040. Water rights battles are intensifying as snowpack declines 18% per decade, and new developments demand allocations the Yapa River simply cannot provide. When the inevitable wildfire strikes close enough to trigger mass evacuation, when insurance becomes unattainable rather than just expensive, when wealthy absentee owners decide Park City or Jackson Hole are better bets, Steamboat's real estate market won't decline gradually, it will crater with stunning speed, leaving a trail of underwater mortgages and abandoned investment properties across a town that confused tourism revenue with actual economic resilience. Number 8. Crested Butte. Crested Butte wears its quirky charm like armor, the last great Colorado ski town. Unspoiled, authentic, a place where mountain culture still matters more than money. Dig a little deeper and you'll find a community already fracturing under real estate pressure so severe it's driving out the very people who made the town worth visiting. The median home price exploded to $1.48 million by mid-2024, while 62% of properties are now second homes owned by people who visit an average of 18 days per year. The town's year-round population has declined 11% since 2019, falling to just 1,639 people, as teachers, bartenders, Lyft operators, and even mid-level resort managers have been economically cleansed from a valley that once housed them. The local school closed an entire wing in 2023 due to enrollment collapse, down to 147 students from 203 in 2018. Highway 135, the sole paved access route to Crested Butte, becomes impassable during major winter storms, sometimes for days, cutting the town off completely. Yet developers continue to push multi-million-dollar projects that assume reliable access and unlimited water. The Gunnison Valley's water table is dropping 2.3 feet annually, and the outdated water rights system is heading toward a legal catastrophe as new luxury developments demand shares that don't exist. Meanwhile, the town's waste management system is operating at 140% capacity during peak seasons. Raw sewage has backed up into Slate River tributaries twice since 2022, and CDOT has announced it cannot afford the $89 million in highway repairs needed to maintain winter access reliability. Climate projections show Crested Butte losing 31% of its reliable ski season by 2045, with the mountain's base elevation of 9,375 feet no longer high enough to guarantee adequate snowpack when November and March temperatures rise 3 degrees Fahrenheit. The tourism economy is already showing strain. The 2023-2024 season saw a 9% decline in visitor spending despite higher lodging costs, as people realize they're paying aspen prices for an increasingly second-tier experience. When the water rights litigation explodes, when Highway 135 suffers a catastrophic closure during peak season, when climate reality makes skiing unreliable, Crested Butte's real estate market will unravel like a community that built its entire economic identity on a version of itself that can no longer exist. Number 7. Telluride radiates an almost mythical perfection. The Box Canyon town, the billionaire's playground, the place where Hollywood meets high altitude in a setting so stunning it seems immune to economic gravity. In reality, Telluride has become a dystopian experiment in what happens when real estate speculation completely disconnects from any functional economy. The median home price hit $3.2 million in 2024, and there is essentially no housing available under $800,000. Even tear-down cabins now list for $1.1 million for the Land Valley alone. A staggering 73% of properties are second or third homes, the highest rate of any incorporated town in Colorado, creating a place that feels occupied only during Christmas week, Telluride Film Festival, and a handful of summer weekends. The actual year-round population has collapsed to under 2,400 people, down 19% since 2015, as anyone who works for a living has been pushed into Norwood, Placerville, or out of the region entirely. The economic model is completely broken. The town's grocery stores can't stay staffed. The average retail wage is $18.50 per hour, while a bedroom in a shared house 30 miles away costs $1,200 monthly. The hospital lost 40% of its staff between 2021 and 2024, forcing it to recruit traveling nurses at triple the cost while still operating with dangerous understaffing. The town's waste treatment plant is 42 years old and operates at 170% capacity during peak periods, dumping partially treated sewage into the San Miguel River, violations that triggered $780,000 in EPA fines in 2023. The gondola that connects Mountain Village to town, essential infrastructure for the entire resort ecosystem, requires $34 million in repairs and replacement components, but the special district that operates it is functionally bankrupt, sustained only by emergency loans. Avalanche risk is intensifying as snowpack patterns destabilize. The March 2024 avalanche that closed Highway 145 for 6 days was the fourth major closure in 2 seasons, and climate projections show these extreme snow events becoming both more frequent and more unpredictable. But the real rot is deeper. Telluride's tax base is almost entirely dependent on property taxes from absentee owners and resort revenue from tourists, creating an economy with no actual resilience, no workforce, no community fabric to hold it together when the ultra-wealthy decide the next trendy mountain town is elsewhere. When the insurance market collapses completely, when infrastructure failures cascade during a peak tourist week, when the avalanche cycle kills someone in a $6 million home, Telluride's real estate market will reveal itself for what it truly is: the most expensive and elegant house of cards ever built in the Colorado Rockies. Number 6. Breckenridge. Breckenridge projects confidence, the biggest, most accessible ski resort on the Front Range, a town with every amenity, the mountain playground for Denver's professional class. Beneath the surface, Breckenridge is a powder keg of housing oversaturation, infrastructure decay, and economic dependency so extreme that it's already showing fractures. The town proper has a year-round population of just 5,078, yet the housing market supports 11,400 active real estate listings dominated by condos built in the 1970s and 80s that are now facing catastrophic special assessments. Owners across dozens of complexes received bills ranging from $45,000 to $180,000 per unit in 2023-2024 for emergency repairs to roofs, plumbing, and structural elements that have been deferred for decades. Many are simply walking away from their investments rather than pay, flooding the market with distressed properties. The median condo price, which hit $620,000 in 2022, has already plunged 14% to $533,000 by late 2024, and the decline is accelerating as owners realize these aren't appreciating assets anymore. They're depreciating liabilities with mounting costs. Short-term rental revenue is collapsing as Airbnb saturation reaches 41% of all units, creating a race to the bottom pricing dynamic where owners are slashing nightly rates just to cover mortgage and HOA fees they'd never anticipated. Water infrastructure is in crisis. The town's treatment system was built for 8,000 people, but now serves peak loads of over 35,000, causing chronic overflows and contamination incidents that have drawn EPA scrutiny. Highway 9, the main artery from Denver, is a death trap. 37 fatal accidents since 2019, chronic avalanche closures, and a highway surface so deteriorated that CDOT estimates $340 million in repairs are needed just to maintain current functionality. Climate change is already hammering Breckenridge's core product. The 2023-2024 season opened 23 days late due to insufficient snowpack, and long-range forecasts show the ski season contracting by 38 days at Breckenridge's 9,600-foot base elevation by 2040, with increasingly unreliable conditions even when snow does fall. Vail Resorts, which owns the mountain, reported that Breckenridge saw a 16% decline in skier visits in 2023-2024 compared to the previous season, the steepest drop of any Colorado resort in its portfolio. When the condo collapse accelerates, when infrastructure failures force partial shutdowns during peak season, when climate change makes the mountain an unreliable investment, Breckenridge will prove that proximity to Denver and name recognition cannot save a real estate market built on a foundation of deferred maintenance, speculative excess, and environmental conditions that are fundamentally changing in real time. Number 5. Vail. Vail is the crown jewel, the standard bearer, the name synonymous with American luxury skiing. Yet even here, the foundation is crumbling in ways that would horrify the wealthy buyers still paying $4.5 million for slopeside condos. The illusion of permanence is exactly that, an illusion maintained by aggressive marketing and cognitive dissonance. Vail's real estate market faces a convergence of crises that are all accelerating simultaneously. First, the insurance catastrophe. Wildfire risk has made property insurance borderline unattainable in many Vail Valley neighborhoods. Premiums have increased 510% since 2020 for homes in designated fire zones, and major carriers, including State Farm and Allstate, have stopped writing new policies entirely in portions of Eagle County. The 2018 Lake Christine fire, which burned just outside Basalt, was a warning shot that nobody heeded. Second, the workforce exodus. Vail Resorts announced in December 2024 that it was operating lifts at only 73% of optimal capacity due to inability to hire and house staff. Wait times averaged 47 minutes at major lifts on peak days, driving customer satisfaction to all-time lows. The workers they did employ were paying an average of $1,850 per month to sleep in bunk beds in converted hotel conference rooms 30 miles away. Third, the climate collapse. Vail's ski season has contracted by 19 days since 2000. Snowmaking costs have increased 340% as temperatures rise, and the resort now dumps $12 million annually into artificial snowmaking just to maintain base operations, a cost that gets passed to visitors who are already balking at $239 daily lift tickets. The town of Vail itself is facing infrastructure bankruptcy. Its water and sewer systems require $156 million in immediate repairs and upgrades. But the town's bonding capacity is nearly exhausted, and Colorado's Tabor Amendment limits its ability to raise revenue. Interstate 70, the only practical access route, has become a nightmare of weekend traffic, accidents, and avalanche closures so severe that some Denver families have simply stopped making the trip. The real estate market is already responding. Sales volumes in Vail proper declined 23% in 2024 compared to 2022, while inventory spiked 34%, creating the first sustained buyer's market in over a decade. High-end properties are sitting on the market for an average of 247 days, triple the time from 2021, as wealthy buyers realize that Vail's cachet no longer justifies the risk. When a major wildfire inevitably reaches the valley, when the workforce collapse forces resort operations to scale back significantly, when climate change makes the mountain increasingly unreliable for the Christmas and spring break crowds that generate 60% of annual revenue, Vail's real estate market will suffer. Not a correction, but a reckoning. Proof that no amount of luxury branding can insulate a community from the physical and economic realities it spent decades pretending didn't apply to it. Number 4. Aspen. Aspen is supposed to be untouchable, the billionaire's bunker, the place so wealthy, so exclusive, so culturally significant that normal economic rules simply don't apply. In reality, Aspen is the most fragile real estate market in Colorado precisely because its entire valuation is built on perception rather than any sustainable economic foundation. The median home price in Aspen proper exceeds $11 million, with an average price per square foot of $2,847. Astronomical numbers that reflect speculation, status seeking, and a collective delusion that this level of valuation can be maintained indefinitely. But the cracks are widening. Aspen's year-round population has fallen to 6,658, down 14% since 2010, even as the housing stock expanded by 22%, creating a town of empty monuments to wealth that sits largely unused. The worker housing crisis has reached dystopian levels. Teachers and municipal employees are commuting from Rifle and Glenwood Springs, 90-minute drives each way, because nothing remotely affordable exists within 50 miles. The economic model is a house of cards. Pickens County derives 67% of its revenue from property taxes on second homes and luxury real estate, creating a government entirely dependent on the whims of ultra-wealthy people who could abandon the market overnight if conditions change. And conditions are changing. Climate projections show Aspen ski mountains losing 41% of their reliable snow season by 2050, with the lower elevations of Buttermilk and the base of Ajax becoming marginal or unviable even with aggressive snowmaking. The wildfire risk is severe and getting worse. The 2021 Lake Christine fire reached within 11 miles of town, and forestry experts have documented catastrophic beetle kill levels in 78% of the surrounding forests, creating tinderbox conditions across the entire valley. Insurance markets are responding accordingly. High-value property insurance in Aspen's most desirable neighborhoods now costs $34,000 to $67,000 annually, and several carriers have stopped writing policies entirely above $15 million in home value. Infrastructure is failing invisibly. Aspen's water system is 120 years old in some sections, leaks 18% of its water supply, and faces a $240 million repair bill that the city cannot fund without special assessments on property owners. The airport, essential to Aspen's accessibility for the global elite, operates at capacity with no room for expansion in the narrow valley, while also facing increasing closure days due to weather. 37 weather-related closure days in winter 2023-2024, up from an average of 19 in the 2010s. And here's the psychological trigger nobody wants to discuss. Aspen's entire valuation is based on being the ultimate status symbol, but status symbols only maintain value if they remain exclusive and desirable to the next generation of buyers. There are ominous signs that ultra-wealthy younger buyers increasingly view Aspen as passé, a boomer playground lacking the environmental credibility or authentic culture they value. Sales of properties over $20 million declined 31% in 2024 compared to 2021, the first sustained decline since the 2008 financial crisis. When the ultra-wealthy begin to rotate out of Aspen, when a major wildfire or infrastructure failure pierces the illusion of invulnerability, when climate change makes the ski season untenable even for a market that doesn't care about cost, Aspen won't just decline, it will collapse with a speed and severity that will shock the world, proving that the most expensive market is simply the one with the furthest to fall. Number 3. Durango. Durango presents itself as different, the real mountain town, diverse economy, university presence, a place with actual year-round residents and culture beyond tourism. Beneath the surface, Durango is experiencing a real estate implosion in slow motion, driven by forces that are only accelerating. The median home price hit $687,000 in 2024, up 96% since 2019, while the median household income stagnated at $61,400, an 11.2-to-1 ratio that has made home ownership impossible for the teachers, healthcare workers, and even mid-career professionals who comprise the town's actual economic base. Fort Lewis College, a critical stabilizing institution, saw enrollment decline 18% between 2019 and 2024 as students from outside the region increasingly questioned the value of attending a remote Colorado college when housing costs rival Denver's. The loss of 740 students means 740 fewer renters, creating a ripple effect through the landlord-dependent local economy. The wildfire crisis is existential. Durango sits surrounded by 340,000 acres of federally designated high-risk fire zones, with the 2018 416 fire burning to within 3 miles of city limits and forcing evacuations of entire neighborhoods. Insurance companies are responding with brutal efficiency. Homeowners' insurance rates have increased 420% since 2020 in the highest risk zones, and 7 major carriers no longer offer new policies in La Plata County at any price. Animas River water quality is degrading rapidly due to a combination of upstream mining contamination, agricultural runoff, and climate-driven low-flow conditions. The river that defines Durango's identity now regularly fails EPA standards for recreational safety, and prolonged drought has exposed abandoned mine waste that continues to leach heavy metals. The tourism economy is fracturing. Purgatory Resort, Durango's primary ski mountain, has struggled with inconsistent snowfall and mechanical failures so severe it operated at only 60% of lift capacity during peak weeks in 2023-2024, driving visitors to more reliable options in Summit County or New Mexico. Highway 550, the stunning but treacherous route connecting Durango to the rest of Colorado, has become a maintenance nightmare. 14 fatal accidents in 2023, chronic rockfall closures, and a price tag of $180 million for repairs that CDOT cannot afford and will not fund. The real estate market is already in decline. Single-family home sales dropped 28% in 2024, while inventory climbed to 9.2 months of supply, firmly in buyer's market territory, and prices on the lower end have started dropping. Homes under $500,000 are selling for an average of 6.7% below asking price, the first sustained seller desperation in over a decade. The rental market is collapsing even faster. Short-term rental occupancy rates fell from 68% in 2021 to 41% in 2024 as the market became saturated with amateur investors who watched one too many YouTube videos about passive income, and many are now selling at losses rather than continue bleeding $2,000 monthly on vacant properties. When the inevitable major wildfire burns through the College area or Durango West neighborhoods, when insurance becomes genuinely unavailable rather than just expensive, when the university contracts further and the tourist infrastructure continues its decline, Durango's real estate market will reveal that it was never the stable alternative to the resort towns. It was just the illusion of stability, a place where all the same structural problems played out a few years behind the bigger names, with the same devastating endpoint waiting at the end of the road. Number 2. Estes Park. Estes Park should be bulletproof, the gateway to Rocky Mountain National Park, consistent tourist traffic, proximity to the Front Range, a brand name recognized nationally. In reality, Estes Park is a real estate market in the advanced stages of terminal decline, held together only by tourists who don't see behind the curtain and owners who refuse to acknowledge what's already happening. The median home price hit $715,000 in 2024, but this number masks a brutal reality. Homes are sitting on the market for an average of 312 days, nearly a full year, the longest average in any Colorado mountain community. Sellers are slashing prices. The average home now sells for 8.3% below its original listing price, and properties that finally do sell often appraise below purchase price, killing deals at closing and forcing sellers to bring cash to the table. The insurance apocalypse has already arrived. The East Troublesome Fire in 2020 and the Cameron Peak Fire the same year, which together burned 400,000 acres within 50 miles of town, triggered a complete transformation of the insurance market. Major carriers have entirely withdrawn from Estes Park. State Farm, Allstate, USAA, and Farmers no longer write new homeowners policies in the town, period. Existing homeowners are being non-renewed en masse, forced into Colorado's FAIR Plan, the state's insurer of last resort, where premiums run 300 to 400% higher than traditional insurance, and coverage limits are capped at levels inadequate for most homes. Properties worth $800,000 can only be insured for $400,000 through FAIR Plan, creating mortgage problems and making homes effectively unsaleable to buyers who need financing. The result? A cascading market failure where sellers cannot find buyers who can obtain insurance, buyers who can get insurance cannot get affordable mortgages, and the entire transaction infrastructure is grinding to a halt. The flood risk is equally catastrophic and completely underestimated. The 2013 Big Thompson flood, which killed 8 people and caused $1 billion in damage across the region, was not a once-in-a-century event. It was a preview of the new normal. Climate projections show these atmospheric river events becoming 40% more frequent by 2040, and large sections of Estes Park sit in floodplains that FEMA has identified as high risk but has not yet officially remapped, meaning property owners are operating under outdated flood maps that dramatically underestimate their exposure. When the remapping happens, thousands of properties will suddenly require flood insurance that will cost $3,000 to $7,000 annually, and their values will plummet overnight. The town's economy is already in distress. Rocky Mountain National Park has implemented timed entry reservations that have reduced visitor spending in town by an estimated 22% since 2021, as tourists book their park tickets but skip the expensive lodging and restaurants in Estes proper. Commercial vacancy rates have climbed to 17%, with long-established businesses closing because they cannot find workers willing to commute to Estes or afford to live there. The water system is in crisis. The town violated EPA drinking water standards 14 times in 2023 due to aging infrastructure and inadequate treatment capacity, while also facing a future where the Big Thompson River's flow is projected to decline 23% by 2050, threatening water availability for both residents and the tourism industry. Highway 34, the primary access route from I-25, is a crumbling corridor of rockfall hazards and flood-damaged sections that CDOT has essentially given up on maintaining to modern standards. The state has announced it will manage closures rather than fund comprehensive repairs, meaning Estes Park could be cut off for days or weeks during major weather events. When the next major wildfire or flood event hits, when the insurance market completes its collapse, when the park's reservation system further restricts visitor access, Estes Park's real estate market will not decline. It will capitulate, becoming a case study in how quickly a seemingly stable mountain town can transform into a stranded asset community, where homes become nearly worthless because the fundamental conditions that gave them value have permanently changed. Number 1. Grand Lake. Grand Lake sells itself as Colorado's soul. The authentic mountain village, the western gateway to Rocky Mountain National Park, the place where the Colorado River begins, a community untouched by the development madness that consumed everywhere else. In reality, Grand Lake is already in the terminal phase of real estate collapse, a slow-motion disaster that most buyers still don't recognize because the town's image remains frozen in the 1970s, even as its actual conditions have become untenable. The median home price sits at $825,000, a figure that would be merely high except for one critical fact. Grand Lake has no year-round economy whatsoever. The town's population officially sits at 471 people, but the true winter population, the people who actually live there December through April, is estimated at fewer than 200. Nearly 80% of all properties are second homes that sit vacant 300-plus days per year, creating a ghost town that briefly animates for a few summer weeks and then dies again. The East Troublesome Fire in 2020 didn't just burn near Grand Lake, it burned through Grand Lake, destroying 366 structures and forcing the complete evacuation of the town during the middle of a pandemic winter. The psychological impact cannot be overstated. Owners watched their investments burn in real time on news helicopters. Insurance companies paid out $140 million in claims and then immediately began pulling out of the market. And the entire community realized that Grand Lake sits in a fire zone so severe that the question is not if, but when the next catastrophic burn occurs. Insurance is now functionally unavailable. Owners pay $8,000 to $15,000 annually for bare-bones fair plan coverage that wouldn't come close to rebuilding their homes, and many have simply dropped coverage entirely, gambling that they'll sell before the next fire hits. The market is responding. Home sales volume collapsed 47% in 2024 compared to 2021. Inventory has spiked to 14.3 months of supply, and price reductions of 15 to 20% below original asking prices have become standard. Properties sit unsold for 2 years or more, with sellers in complete denial about the fact that there simply are no buyers willing to pay 2021 prices for a home in an uninsurable fire zone with no year-round economy. The infrastructure is failing in ways that would be headline news if anyone was paying attention. The town's water system is 90 years old, leaks 31% of its water, and violates EPA standards regularly due to insufficient capacity and outdated treatment. The sewer system dumps partially treated waste into the Colorado River headwaters whenever heavy rains overwhelm the plant, a problem that has triggered $1.2 million in EPA fines and a consent decree requiring $18 million in upgrades that the town cannot afford. Highway 34 over Trail Ridge Road, the spectacular but seasonal route connecting Grand Lake to Estes Park through Rocky Mountain National Park, closes every winter from late October to late May, and climate change has made the closure period longer and less predictable. The road didn't open until July 3 in 2024 due to massive snow accumulation that took months to clear. This leaves Highway 40 as the only access route, a road so prone to avalanche closures, rockfall, and winter accidents that Grand Lake residents routinely get trapped in town for days at a time. The economic model is completely broken. There are virtually no grocery stores, no medical facilities beyond a small clinic that closes in winter, no schools, nothing that allows someone to actually live year-round in anything resembling modern life. The few people who do winter over describe a community in suspended animation, where essential services disappear, where help is hours away even in emergencies, where the isolation becomes psychological as much as physical. And here's the final, brutal reality. Grand Lake's property values were always built on nostalgia and fantasy, the idea of owning a piece of authentic Colorado mountain culture. But that culture has been dead for 20 years, and what remains is a collection of aging cabins and empty streets in a location that climate change, insurance market collapse, and infrastructure failure have rendered fundamentally obsolete. When the next major fire sweeps through the valley, when winter access becomes even more unreliable, when enough owners finally accept that their investment is actually a depreciating liability in a dying town, Grand Lake will complete its transformation into a ghost town, not because people abandoned it all at once, but because they slowly realized there was never any reason to stay. And by the time they tried to leave, they discovered that no one else was foolish enough to buy their dreams of a Colorado mountain paradise that exists now only in the graveyard of real estate markets that confused beautiful views with actual value.